Hey there, preppers and procrastinators. Today we're going to talk a little bit about weapon safety and negligent discharges. In fact, we're going to cause some negligent discharges. Now, while I non-negligently discharge these weapons today, you can see I'm shooting into a berm. There's no traffic around, there's no people, nothing like that. If you want to practice seeing what happens when your finger's on the trigger at the wrong time, this is the kind of conditions to use. Or we can use this video as an opportunity to learn from my mistakes that I'm going to make today. We're going to use my trusty three-legged assistant here today to keep weapons pointed in a safe direction. We're starting out, nothing in the chamber, no feed source, rifle's completely empty and unsafe. So we're gonna focus today mostly on what happens when you charge a weapon with your finger on the trigger. I watched a video yesterday, it was a compilation of negligent discharges that are caught on YouTube, and it gave me the idea of figuring out what different scenarios with your finger on the trigger cause the pointy end to go boom. I know that most of you are, Black Hawk Down, Delta Force.
You know better than that. Your safety should be on at all times on base.
Well, that's my safety, sir.
This is my safety, and I exercise excellent trigger control. My finger never goes on the trigger until I'm ready to execute something. Yeah, totally understand. 99.9999999% of you are never going to accidentally shoot your rifle off in an unsafe manner. However, stressful situations, especially with a lack of training or experience, that's when I think you could get out of your element with your finger on the trigger, charge your weapon, and pachoo! So that's the overarching purpose of the video, is just kind of increase awareness out there. 20 years as an artilleryman, I'm going deaf, so I double my ear pro now. And the old Army adage, if it ain't raining, you ain't training. I brought the rain. Single round of the magazine, shallow into the berm ahead of me. I'm gonna load my 1-round magazine. My bolt is locked to the rear. I'm gonna pull the charging handle back, put the weapon on fire for whatever reason, make sure my barrel's down in a safe direction, pull the trigger, and let's see what happens. That didn't actually go off. Release the trigger, and bang. Okay. Bolt forward, weapon on fire, magazine in, trigger depressed. Nothing happened because there's no round in the chamber. Let's charge it. Still nothing. All right, so now what happens? Weapon on safe, charge the rifle, trigger is depressed, but it's on safe, so the trigger hasn't, or the hammer hasn't dropped yet. But what happens when you put it on fire? Okay, so now we can negligently discharge. Okay, weapon clear. If you charge an AR-15 with the trigger depressed, nothing happens. Audible click, weapon on safe, pull the trigger, nothing happens. However, now rotate the selector switch from safe to fire with your finger on the trigger, and the rifle will fire. So I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that it would ever be a good idea to charge your weapon with your finger on the trigger. Absolutely not. However, in a sports scenario, slap, pull, observe, release, tap, squeeze, you might get those out of order. So I can't imagine in a stressful environment with a lack of experience that you might charge a weapon with your finger on the trigger. And I can absolutely imagine that you might come up to engage a target and pull the trigger as you raise the rifle. If you do, that might be your battle buddy in front of you. You could hit a concrete block and now you're ricocheting into your face. Maybe it's your foot as you come up. So it's not hard to imagine extremely unfortunate scenarios. All right, last thing that I want to try, bolt lock to the rear. I have no reason to believe that this will go off, but let's try a drop test. Safety selector to fire. Okay, same thing, doesn't go off when you charge the rifle. So we started with the AR-15 because that is America's rifle. But what about other semi-automatic platforms, like these pistol caliber carbines? Magazine inserted, weapon on fire, trigger squeezed. What happens when we charge the weapon? Nothing. So now there's a round chambered, weapon is charged, weapon's on safe, finger on trigger. What happens when we rotate the selector switch? I'm gonna do this two-handed, which is weird, but to make sure that I'm in a safe direction. All right, it takes a second. There's an extra wall or something there. Let's try that again. On safe, charge the weapon, pull the trigger. This time I'll apply pressure. Weapon on fire. Yep. All right, weapon on safe, weapon is empty. So AR platform and semi-automatic rifle platform, same. No negligent discharge when charging the weapon, but if you select fire from safety with your finger on the trigger, you get banged. Now let's test the pistol that everybody either loves or loves to hate, and that's the Glock. In this case, it's Glock 19. Again, the weapon is empty, nothing in the chamber. It's not unsafe because Glocks don't have a safe other than trigger safety. Weapon loaded, in a safe direction, trigger depressed. I've already heard the striker drop, so I believe this will not do anything. However, let's find out. Okay, nothing. All right, there's no purpose in testing the safety because there is no safety. We'll try charging a couple more times. Weapon is empty, 1 round magazine inserted, weapon held firmly in a safe direction, and charge. Nothing.
Okay, can I sight picture?
Okay, now we're gonna do our drop test, or as closely simulated to a drop test as we can do. Okay, weapon loaded, safe direction. Let's see if we can hammer the striker. No, but I'd probably breaking my grip. Ow, my finger. Okay, so I know that that's not a scientific test, but I couldn't get it to go off. Well, I could not get my Glock to negligently discharge. Keeping in the theme of soldiers, let's go to the M17. This is the civilian version of the M17. It's not even the mock army version, the M17X or whatever it was. No magazine, everything is empty. 1 round magazine, safety off, trigger depressed, weapon in a safe direction. See what happens when it charges. Nothing. So weapon is on safe now, does not fire. Let's see what happens when we depress the trigger and then select fire. Not easy to do, by the way. You really have to try to make a mistake. But if you can get it done, it will negligently discharge. All right, same test. Weapon on fire. Slide lock to the rear. Weapon in a safe direction. Charge the weapon. Nothing. Pistol on safe. Finger off the trigger. Finger on the trigger. Weapon on fire. All right, now let's see if we can get it to go off in our simulated drop test. In a safe direction, our trusty ground surface, weapon on fire. So without trying to do too much damage to my pistol, nothing happened. All right, so let's go with another very common concealed carry pistol. This is a 6-hour P365 XL. No magazine, nothing in the chamber, weapon is empty. Again, no safety feature, not even a trigger safety. So round in the magazine, pointing in a safe direction, trigger depressed, and charge the weapon. Try it again. Magazine loaded, 1 round in the magazine, weapon in a safe direction, trigger depressed, charge the weapon, and nothing. Now let's try the drop test. I'm sure that there are better ways to do this, but I love my weapon, so I'm not trying to beat them up too much. In a safe direction. So once again, no negligent discharging. Okay, another popular concealed carry option is a Springfield Hellcat. Weapon is empty. Again, there are no manual safeties on this, just the trigger guard safety. 1 round in the magazine, weapon in a safe direction, trigger depressed. I don't expect anything to happen here. Nothing. Okay, 1 round magazine, weapon in a safe direction, trigger is already depressed, but we'll continue to hold the trigger. Nothing. All right, simulated drop testing. 1 round magazine, weapon is loaded in a safe direction. Okay, so now let's get into a scenario base where you're in your home in the middle of the night, your alarm goes off, and there's burglars in your house. Now you're under stress, you're trying to protect the family, the alarm is going, you're waiting for the police to come, you're stressed out. Let's see what kind of scenarios we can get ourselves into where we might cause a negligent discharge with your handy dandy 12-gauge shotgun. This is the DP12 double barrel shotgun. For now, we're just gonna load one barrel and see what kind of trouble we can get into with that. So getting ready to load a round into the chamber. Weapon on fire. I'd say I'm pulling the trigger, but that trigger is locked for now. Let's find out if the trigger releases as we chamber the round. Ready, set, nothing. See what happens now. Nothing. All right, we have a round chambered. Finger is on the trigger. Safe direction. Depressing the trigger while selecting fire. Okay, weapon is charged, on safe, fingers on the trigger. There you go. All right, weapon is empty, no more shells, on safe. So much like the safety selector switch in the AR-15 and the CZ Evo 6-hour M17, anything with the safety selector switch, if your finger is on the trigger, when you move from safe to semi, you can negligently discharge the weapon that way. All right, well, let's see what kind of trouble I can get into out on a hunt. Maybe there's a big trophy buck of a lifetime. We've got buck fever, and let's see if those nerves could cause any negligent discharges. Rifle is empty, on safe. This is a Sig Cross 308. So let's see if we can get a negligent discharge while closing the bolt. So we'll switch to fire, pull the trigger left-handed, and then we will close the bolt and see what happens. Well, that makes it hard to close. Okay, bolt is all the way forward and ready to lock the bolt. Okay, nothing happens again. So closing actions doesn't cause the firing pin to engage. Now, rifle on safe, one round loaded in the chamber. We're gonna pull the trigger and rotate to fire and see what happens. So same thing with semi-automatics. Anytime you change from safe to fire with your finger on the trigger, you're sending a round downrange. So far, anytime we manipulate the action, whether it's bolt action or semi-auto, with our finger on the trigger and the weapon on fire, we're not causing the gun to fire. So fire, trigger, bolt, nothing. Safe, finger on the trigger while switching to fire, and that's a shot. So I know there's a lot of back and forth about hunting with the rifle chambered. Let's give this the old hammer test, simulated drop or whatever. Okay, that was with safety on. Take the safety off and do the same thing. So no discharge with the striking the butt plate. Before we get into this next scenario with every kid's first gun, the Ruger 1022, which is definitely a scenario where inexperienced children, especially maybe not fully supervised, could have a negligent discharge. I just want to take a minute, say thank you guys for watching the video. Hopefully this is educational on top of entertaining. I fired probably 15 negligent discharges today, put that on record. They were all controlled, they were all under test, they were all 6 feet up into a 30-foot hillside. There's no one around. If I heard dirt bikes or four-wheelers or whatever, I would wait. This was, for science. Please feel free to comment down below any of your thoughts on negligent discharge or things that I could try in order to create a negligent discharge. Anything that I can test here in a safe environment and share with everybody on the internet to help eliminate or bring awareness to negligent discharging. That is the purpose of this channel, is learning and trying to share information and knowledge. All right, now let's talk about every kid's first rifle, the Ruger 1022. This is my kid's rifle. If anybody's gonna have a negligent discharge, it's a kid trying to load a rifle their first time or unsupervised or whatever. So let's see what kind of trouble I can get into by pretending I'm a child. Weapon is empty, on safe. Let's mess that up. I don't know how you would pull that back, pull that up, put it on fire, pull the trigger, and release it. Nothing. So weapon's loaded, it's on safe, there's a round in the chamber, I'm pulling the trigger, and yep, semi-automatics with a safety. If you're pulling the trigger and releasing the safety, you are shooting. Let's charge this as normal. Okay, we're gonna fire it as normal. Then we are going to charge it. So again, the only way that I can get this to ND is by having the trigger squeezed while changing from safe to fire. All right, preppers and procrastinators, that brings us to the end of the video. Moral of the story, Trigger control. You're responsible for every round that leaves your barrel, so before you put your finger anywhere near that trigger well and get ready to move that thumb selector switch, make sure that you've identified a target, you're locked on the target, you've made sure that there's nothing unsafe in front of or behind the target, and that you are ready to eliminate that threat. Thank you again. I'll see you on the next video.